What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the Game Week 10 preview, so I'm going to go through a bunch of questions and topics that you put to me on Twitter and give you my opinion. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like as always. Hit that subscribe button if you are new around here. Before we jump into the questions, I wanted to talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Fantasy Football Scout, who can help you be better at FPL by signing up and becoming a premium member to make use of all the great tools they have. There's comparison tools, rate my team tools, members articles, there's custom stats tables, there's projections over the next kind of 6 weeks and for the whole season as well, and many other things, some of which we will use in today's video. And you can sign up from as little as £2.49 a month. So if you want to check that out, link in the description below, go and check it out now. So first question's about Ben Chilwell. Do you think that Chilwell is nailed and a good option? Will Chelsea play 3 or 4 at the back? I mean, there's lots of questions there that are very difficult to answer because Graham Potter has only been in charge for 3 games. So do I think he's nailed? I don't think I'm quite there to say that yet. I think when I think of a nailed player, I'm never really worried that their name isn't going to be on the team sheet. So Mo Salah, nailed player. Van Dijk, nailed player. For Chelsea, probably Reece James I would put down as pretty much nailed on that right-hand side. You know, you go to Man City, Haaland's nailed, you know, Cancelo's pretty nailed. These are players I think of. I don't think that yet with Ben Chilwell. So I've got to say no to that question right now. That could change over the next few weeks. Is he a good option? Yes, if he gets enough minutes, but I think that's in doubt. And will Chelsea play 3 or 4 at the back? Well, Graham Potter's been in charge for 3 games. In 2 of them, they played 3 at the back. In 1 of them, they played 4 at the back. And we've seen that with Brighton as well. He's not afraid to change the formation. For what it's worth, I think they mostly play 3 at the back, but it's not guaranteed every single game. Now, with Chilwell, it's also difficult to answer because for the game against Crystal Palace, where they played a back 4 and he played left back, Cucurella was ill, right? And he was back in the squad for the Champions League game yesterday, but he was on the bench. Was he on the bench because Graham Potter was happy with the rest of the team? Or was he on the bench because he's only just come back from illness? It's very hard to know right now, which is why I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to rush and get Chilwell. He could be a huge differential. If you tell me that he's going to start every single game from now until game week 16, I'd love to have him in my team because I think in a wing-back formation, he's just as attacking and good as Reece James is. But I just think there's slight doubts over that right now, which is why I probably wouldn't get him at this minute. But maybe over the next few weeks we can look at him. If you look at the team they played against AC Milan, it was another 3 at the back. All of Fofana, Silva and Koulibaly played, and Chilwell was left wing back. Now, I think the thing with Chilwell is he's very unlikely to go and play left centre back. I think most of the time, if they're going to do that, and it's not Koulibaly, it's going to be Cucurella. Now, the interesting thing last night is Fofana's gone and got injured. Now, we don't know how long he's out for, but given the reports that were coming out of the game yesterday, it looks like he could be out for a few weeks at the minimum. So if that happens, somebody else has to play right centre back. Now, they do have options there. I wonder if Potter might try out Koulibaly on that side. That is not guaranteed because I think for Napoli, Koulibaly mostly played on the left. He's also done that under Tuchel as well. So that seems to be his spot. But if Potter wants to play Cucurella quite a bit, which he did at Brighton, of course, I think he played pretty much every single game he was available for, then that left centre-back position could be his and Koulibaly could move over. And if that does happen, then maybe Chilwell keeps his place on the left. But these are all kind of if this happened, if that happens. We just don't know. So I think if I was going to describe my thoughts towards Ben Chilwell, it would be cautiously optimistic. I think there's a good chance he starts the majority of the next few games as the left wing back, but it's not guaranteed. And there's plenty of other good defenders that you could look at. So unless you're looking for kind of a massive differential, I'd maybe hold off for the next couple of weeks, unless obviously Potter says something in his press conference. But Chilwell is coming back from a pretty bad injury. And I do think they'll manage him, given that they've got lots of fixture congestion from now until the World Cup. So for me, I really kind of want to go for him, but I just think there's enough things there that would put me off right now. So this question is about premium defenders. Are expensive defenders still worth it, or are there better ways to spend the money? So I think it's quite interesting that these 3 gave us a timely reminder in the Champions League of what they can do. So Cancelo got an assist last night against Copenhagen. He did come off before the 60th minute, which was a bit annoying for anyone that had him in Champions League fantasy, but he got an attack and return. Trent got a goal and an assist, and Reece James got a goal, assist, and a clean sheet. Now, I know Cancelo was playing Copenhagen, Trent was playing Rangers. They're not exactly, massively massively difficult fixtures for these teams, but it does show what they can do. But going forward, do we need all three of these? I'm a little bit less sure about that. I think Trippier, for example, is a really good option that you could have in for one of these. And if we're looking kind of from now until game week 16, in the short term, you definitely don't need Trent for the next 2 weeks. Arsenal away, Man City at home. The chances of clean sheets in those games are difficult. Maybe from game week 12 onwards you could consider it, but I don't think there's any rush to get him right now. Similarly for Cancelo, really good option this week, but then he plays Liverpool away. I wouldn't expect him to keep a clean sheet. Then he's got a blank. So from game week 13 onwards, yes, you might need him if you don't already own him, but right now I don't think there's a massively great reason to buy him. I think you just got to hope that Southampton score and he doesn't get a mega haul this week. And I'm talking about if you don't already own him. One thing you can do, and we'll use the Fantasy Football Scout members area for this. Again, you can sign up in the link in the description below if you want to check it out. But there's a Rate My Team tool, right? So you can bring up your own team, but you can also look at projections for different players. So we're looking at game week 10 to 15. I'm going to change that to 16, right? Because that's right up until the World Cup. And we'll go for defenders. And it will show us who is predicted to be the top scoring defenders from now until game week 16. So you might not be surprised. Trent's up there. Reece James is up there. Cancelo is in third place, even though he doesn't even play in game week 12. Then it's Perisic, Van Dijk, Trippier, who I mentioned as well. And you can see the total points they're expected to get. So 31.34 there, 31.33 for Reece James. And what is kind of handy to do is then go and look at the players you're thinking of getting in instead. So I would imagine some people are thinking of going cheap for their defenders so they can get different midfielders in. £8 million midfielders are now very popular all of a sudden. So we can go to midfielders instead. Now it's going to put players like Salah and De Bruyne in there. So we can put the maximum price to 8.5 million. And you can see there, so Zaha is top of the list, 31.54. Bowen, 30.37. Maddison, 27.83. I'm not going to go through them all, but the point is, and obviously you can have your own opinion. You don't have to use a tool for this. This is like getting a second opinion. They're not really that far ahead of those cheaper defenders. So right now, as those premium defenders who are a little bit cheaper than these midfielders. So right now, especially over the next couple of weeks, it doesn't feel like you absolutely need Cancelo apart from this week. Same for Trent Alexander-Arnold. But I don't think they're completely... They should be completely out of our mind when it comes to making picks over the next few weeks. I think from game week 12, 13 onwards, like a Man City defender for 13 to 16 looks pretty damn good. I know Cancelo's attacking numbers haven't been great so far, but they've got the fixtures to get plenty of clean sheets, and he's always there to potentially get you an attack and return as well. And I just think Reece James, again, last night against AC Milan, goal, assist, clean sheet, that is what he can do. He is that kind of player that can get a big haul out of absolutely nowhere. So are they worth it? I don't think you necessarily need all three, although that's what I've got in my team. That might be a mistake. But having at least one or two, and then probably Trippier as well, definitely looks good. And I think there's a chance, not right now, but from game week 12, 13 onwards, that four at the back could make a comeback as well. So is it worth selling Arsenal attackers like Saka for Zaha this week? So I saw a lot of people plan this move, and now they're questioning it, and I'm not really sure why. I don't think much has changed over the last couple of weeks that would stop me making this transfer. I know Arsenal scored 3 goals against Spurs, so now we're expecting them to do really well against Liverpool as well, and that could happen, but I don't think Liverpool is suddenly a walkover. So if you were pre-planning this move, I would ask yourself, what has changed that's now stopping me doing it? There might be something, right? Mitrovic, if he's ruled out for a few weeks, then yeah, we'd have to look at that. But I think Saka to Zaha is an okay move, especially if you've got 2 free transfers. So when I was thinking about going Game Week 8 wildcard, the plan was to roll in Game Week 9 and then do Saka to Zaha in Game Week 10. So if I've got 2 free transfers, nothing else to do, and I've got Saka sitting there, I think I would sell him to Zaha. It's maybe a little bit more difficult if you've only got 1 free transfer, but I do think at some point you're probably making this move anyway, and it's going to depend on team setup, but I feel like if you've got Saka, you've probably got Martinelli, and you've probably got Haaland, and you've probably got Cancelo. Now, Haaland and Martinelli, a lot of people have got money tied up in them. And with Cancelo, you could sell him, but he's got Southampton at home. And I don't think there's many better defenders this week. Whereas with Saka, he's got Liverpool at home, which is an okay fixture for Arsenal. But there are definitely midfielders out there with better fixtures. So if you're going to have to sell him for Game Week 12 anyway, I'd maybe just get it over and done with this week. If you've got 1 free transfer, you could definitely roll. But if you're going to do it anyway, I think Zaha bringing in is a perfectly kind of reasonable player to get, right? If you look at Arsenal's fixtures, sure, they could get something against Liverpool at home. Leeds away is good, but then they've got that blank. And I look at Zaha's fixtures. He's got Leeds at home, good fixture. better than Liverpool at home for sure, although obviously Arsenal are a better attacking team. Leicester away, that's been a good fixture for most of this season, so I don't think it's that much worse than Leeds away for Arsenal. And then obviously, crucially, he plays in game week 12. You could look to reverse it after that, but it's like I was saying on the team selection video yesterday, I like Zaha because if there's other priorities, you can just hold him because the fixtures are really good up until game week 16. So with Saka, I think in most situations I probably would still do that move if it was pre-planned. For anyone that's thinking about shipping a different midfielder to Zaha, I think that's a little bit more difficult because if it's Maddison, it's not happening against Bournemouth. So forget that. If I've got Maddison, I wouldn't be switching to Zaha. The other one is Bowen. So a lot of people got him, were really frustrated. Now he's gone and got a goal and assist. They don't want to get rid of him. And I think the same. Again, if you've not got 2 free transfers, I would not be looking at Bowen to Zaha this week. I think Bowen against Fulham at home is just as good as Zaha against Leeds at home. And I can't really think of many other £8 million midfielders people would even be looking to get rid of. Kulusevski's not an option right now, so yeah, okay, if you've got him, you go to Zaha. But the only other one really is Foden, and you're not going to get rid of him before Southampton at home, especially when he didn't play in the Champions League. So to go back to the original question, I think the answer is yes in most situations, especially if you pre-planned it. But if you've got 1 free transfer, you could hold off another week if you wanted to. But for most other people, you're probably keeping most of the £8 million midfielders you already own. So I've called this Mitrovic replacements, but really this is just a discussion about the cheaper forwards, right? So anyone kind of up to Ivan Toney's price, if you're looking for a new forward for your team, it is worth saying at the time recording, we still do not know how long, if at all, that Mitrovic will be out for. So what I'll do is when we've heard the press conferences tomorrow, I'll do the final thoughts video and I'll just cover it off quickly. I'm still kind of the opinion that if he's only out for a week, then I probably just want to hold him because the fixtures are still pretty good afterwards. But some of you might be looking for a new forward, so let's talk about them. So I don't want to describe Toney as a boring option because I think when you use words like boring, it's almost like a negative thing that he's not a good option, but he just is, right? We all know he's a good option. We know he's solid. We know he's going to play 90 minutes. We know he's on penalties, all this stuff. He's a good set and forget option. So if you want someone like that, just go for Toney. If you don't want any issues down the line, because I think every other player on this list, there's just a slight hesitation with picking them from me. It's not that they're bad options, but there's just always something I'm not quite sure about. So Wilson, for example, I really like what Newcastle have done so far this season. From an attacking sense, they've been brilliant. But if we look at the kind of fixtures, I think it depends how long-term you're looking. And I'm still kind of the opinion that for the forward slots, you don't want to be using too many transfers on them. The blank is kind of in a really annoying time because I think it'd be great if we could just get loads of Arsenal and Man City players in our team. But from game week 13 onwards, that's what I want to focus my transfers on. I don't want to have to keep making forward changes. So that's why I'm a little bit cautious about all these other players on the list. So Wilson, for example, 7.2 million, slightly cheaper than Toney. He's also on penalties, but obviously he has had an injury, so there could be some minutes being managed there for sure. I think he probably starts if he's fit, but we might not see him get to kind of 80 to 90 minutes in some of the games. Like I think the first game back, he only actually played 65 against Fulham. The fixtures for the next 3 are okay. Brentford at home, Everton at home. And I don't think Man United away would scare Newcastle right now. Then it's Spurs away. They've also got to play Chelsea in game week 16. The Southampton game is away too. Like I don't think he's a bad option if he can stay fit. But I'm just slightly worried they might manage his minutes a little bit and come off the pitch around 60, 65, 70. And that when the kind of midweek games happen as well, especially if Isak is back, I'm just doubting slightly whether or not they would fully rest him. I don't think they would, but that's in the back of my mind, as is an injury reoccurrence. So I really like Wilson in the short term, especially for the next maybe 3, possibly the next 5. I just worried I'm going to have to make another transfer down the line. And I think I can say exactly the same for the next player on the list, which is Martial. Now, he's even closer to Mitrovic's price at 6.9 million. It's obviously going to depend when you got Mitrovic in. But he came off the bench against Man City. I think it's very clear he is the number 9 that Ten Hag wants to play. In pre-season, he was very good. I know some of those fixtures were very easy. But getting that injury really hurt what Ten Hag wanted to do. It's extremely clear that Ronaldo is just not in the plans. And there's every chance that he might play again in the Europa League. But I think for the Premier League games, Martial is going to start when he's fit. But obviously, like Wilson, he is always an injury concern. He's just coming back from an injury. When will that happen again? That's the kind of things that worry me. One interesting thing to point out is in that Man City game, Fernandes was on the pitch and Martial took the penalty. He kind of was like, I'm taking this. So he may be ahead of Fernandes for penalty duty. Probably not ahead of Ronaldo, but I don't think Ronaldo's going to be on the pitch enough to worry about that. If we look at Man United's fixtures for Martial, obviously he's only played like 45 against Liverpool and 10 minutes against Man City, but still come away with 1 assist and 2 goals. So he's done really well. The fixtures are okay, but they've got to play Spurs at home. They've got to play Chelsea away. Now, no matter what you think about Man United, apart from when they play Man City, their attack is still pretty good. So I think they can create chances, but I just don't look at those 2 fixtures as ones that I really like. I think if you look at them as a whole from game weeks 10 to 16, they've still got to play West Ham at home, Villa away, Fulham away. They're not bad fixtures. But again, it comes back to that point. Do I trust Martial to stay fit? I know some people will be less cautious than me. They'll just get the player in, and if they have to deal with it later, then so be it. They'll just get a different forward in at the time. But I just keep thinking to the fact I'm going to want to spend transfers on the top 2 teams in the league right now, Man City and Arsenal. I don't want to be worrying about changing this player again. So it's not me trying to put you off, but I think thinking out loud like that helps you see the kind of doubts I have. Watkins are just not really interested. I think if you're going to spend 7.2, both Tony and Wilson are just just better options all round. So I'm not really that interested in Watkins. I think the Aston Villa attack is just not good enough right now. I wouldn't go for Solanke unless you absolutely need the cash. I still think for 5.7 million, he's probably the best option. But as you can see from those expected goals, expected assist numbers, he's pretty rubbish. Bournemouth are pretty rubbish. You're maybe relying on the odd half chance that he gets in some of the games, the fact they've got good fixtures, or maybe getting a penalty. He's really in there as an enabler to allow you to spend money elsewhere. But if you're not on an expensive defence, if you've got Haaland and maybe De Bruyne, you've saved the money on Salah, you don't need to have Solanke. So I just wouldn't go for him unless you need that cash. And then Scamacca's an interesting one. I think if Antonio plays in the Europa League, that might now set the way for Scamacca to start most of the Premier League games. I still think his minutes are a slight concern in terms of how long he'll be on the pitch each time, because Moyes does now have 2 strikers that he can rotate a little bit. So he started against Wolves, but he only played, I can't scroll down, he only played 65 minutes against them. So that's a slight concern. But West Ham's next three or four fixtures, if you discount the Liverpool game, Fulham at home, Southampton away and Bournemouth at home, if you could guarantee me starts in all of those games, and I think Scamacca is a very, very interesting option. I don't think West Ham have been great in attack so far this season, but we know that they are a good team that can get plenty of goals, and you know what better player to have than their number 9 if you've not got a spot for like Bowen in your midfield. So if I'm looking at these as the options, Welbeck is an option as well, but I don't like Brighton's fixtures. If I was going to go for a Brighton player, I'd probably just go for Trossard right now and jump on the bandwagon. So I think Tony is the safest. I think Martial could be interesting after that, but Wilson's probably the one I'd go for over Martial if I had the money. I just think their fixtures are slightly better in the short term. And if you really want to go for a punt, it's probably going to be Scamacca. But if he starts it, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong as well, aren't I? But if he starts in the Europa League, then I would question his minutes, because then there's every chance that Antonio plays. So outside of Tony, they've all got slight issues. It depends how much of a risk or a punt you want to take, really. Okay, so Liverpool players continue to disappoint. When should we sell their players? So realistically, I think if you're going to sell them, it's got to be right now. Like if you look at the fixtures, why would it be in a different time? So they've got Arsenal away and Man City at home. They're going to be difficult games to score goals, and they're going to be difficult games to keep a clean sheet. And I can see both of those games being somewhat open, but I don't expect obviously Liverpool to go and score 3, 4, 5 goals in either of those games. So they are going to be difficult, but I don't see why you would hold on for these two to then sell before West Ham at home in game week 12. Now, you could argue that's not a great fixture, but that is a week where Arsenal and Man City do not play. Are you telling me you're going to go into game week 12 and your biggest priority is going to be to sell a playing Liverpool player? Probably not. Then they play Nottingham Forest away, who've been awful defensively. They conceded lots of chances, lots of goals, just shipped 4 to Leicester. Do we really think that Liverpool aren't going to score a bunch past them as well? Like, Liverpool have done okay in terms of goals scored so far this season. They're still in the top 3 for expected goals generated as well. They are still a really, really good attacking team. And you can say, get rid of the Bournemouth game, they scored 9 goals, that's skewing the figures. That was an easy fixture where they showed just what they can do. I think they can do similar against Nottingham Forest. They're probably not going to go and score 9 goals, but who would put it past them to score 4, 5 or 6 or something like that? So I just think if you're not getting rid of them now, you're almost setting yourself up to hold them until at least the Spurs game. And even then, there's going to have to be nothing else wrong with your team because they've got Southampton at home in game week 16, which is pretty good. So I think you need to make the big decision right now. And I think if I had Salah and Trent and I was looking to get rid of one, it would probably be Trent. It depends which defenders you don't have. Like if I haven't got Reece James, I think Trent to Reece James is a perfectly good transfer this week. I think Trent to Trippier is okay because he's got a better fixture this week against Brentford at home. But next week he does play Man United away. So I don't know if he's that much better over the next two. But Reece James is definitely someone I would look at. Obviously, you could go to Cancelo, who has Southampton at home this week, if you don't own him. Like, if for whatever reason you've got Trent and not Cancelo, but then he plays Liverpool away and has got a blank. So I'm not even sure that move's that good. And with Salah, you already know my thoughts. I'm not going to go through it massively again. It was interesting to see that they had a formation change against Rangers, 4-2-3-1. It was kind of more of a 4-4-2, especially when they didn't have possession. Jota and Nunez were often quite close to each other. And I do wonder if this formation is now here to stay, and maybe this was an early test before Arsenal and Man City to try and cause them a few more problems. Obviously, you've heard, I wouldn't even say it's a cliche, but I think James Maddison even spoke about it in his interview. It's not just about the goalkeepers and defence when it comes to defending. The attackers have to do their job as well, put pressure on and press, and those four players can do that. If we were just taking what happened in this game to base our decisions going forward, Mo Salah wasn't massively involved, didn't have a huge amount of shots in the box. Nunez was hogging a lot of those chances, although he was drifting wide as well. But going forward, that could mean they create more chances overall. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. Look, if I've got Salah, I'm probably not looking to sell right now anyway, but you could look to do it. But I think it makes someone like Nunez quite interesting. The problem is Firmino didn't play. And I think in games against Arsenal and Man City, if they line up with this formation, one of Jota or Nunez probably drops out for Firmino, and I think that's an issue why you can't look at any of those players. So if you are looking at Liverpool players, it's still really Trent, Salah and Diaz as the main options, but we're not talking about buying right now, we're talking about selling. I think if you're going to do it, it's got to be this week or next week. So I just don't see why you would do it from game week 12 onwards, unless there was major moves that you wanted to make and you needed the money for something else. So I think most people are already there with Haaland, but let's discuss it anyway. Do you think that we should be using Haaland as a set and forget captain? Lots of people didn't captain him in Game Week 9. It hurt their ranks. It's surely not worth the risk. So it's worth saying that whenever you go against a heavily captain player in any week and it doesn't work out, that's always going to hurt your rank. The counter argument is, if it pays off, that can be really big for your overall rank, right? You get a big green arrow, happy days. But whether or not it's worth taking the risk, that is obviously the main discussion here. And I think most weeks now, Haaland is going to be the best captain. He's probably the best number 9 in the world, playing for a team that score a huge amount of goals, already 29 in the league so far this season. And they're going to get close to 100, if not even more this year. And he's going to score a huge majority. So for me, and like, it's a bit of hindsight, but I'm also slightly annoyed at myself. I already kind of had this conversation with myself that, is it worth the risk? It probably isn't right now, given how he and City are playing. And yet I've gone against it anyway. I suppose, again, just to counter that, if it had paid off, then it looks like a bit of a genius move. But it's really difficult to go against him right now, just how he's playing and how Man City are playing. So for me now, the fixture just has to be really good for a different player. So I don't think from now until Game Week 16 there's many weeks where you can say there's outrightly a better captain. There might be players that are close, and I still do think there are some players that can get close to Haaland, but then whether it's worth that slight risk to get that slight increase in overall rank, possibly not. Possibly not. It might just be worth trying to get the points elsewhere. So if we look quickly at the fixtures they got coming up, I think Game Week 12, obviously you can go somewhere else. He's not playing. I mean, I'm still scared of him that week without a fixture. Game Week 11, I think if you've got Kane, I think you can captain him ahead of Haaland. Like, that is a difficult fixture for me. I think Man City will score. I don't think it will be a huge amount of goals. I think Kane against Everton at home is a better fixture and a better option. That is someone that hasn't, I think he's only blanked once so far this year. People did that in Game Week 8 against Leicester and it worked out. Haaland got 1 goal against Wolves. Doesn't mean it will definitely work out again, but I think Liverpool away is the kind of fixture where you can possibly look elsewhere. Outside of that, Southampton at home, definite captain. And then Game Week 13 to 16, 16, there's no real reason why you couldn't captain him every week. We're not going to worry about after the World Cup. We can discuss that, during the break. I think Fulham at home and Brentford at home, you've got to go for. He's just scored 3 back-to-back hat-tricks at home. It's absolutely insane. The only weeks I will even possibly look at it, and because I've been burnt, I'll be scared to do it, is game week 13 and 14. Now, Brighton aren't necessarily pushovers, although they just conceded 3 to Liverpool, and Leicester away have also conceded quite a few goals. So again, I definitely would not sit here and tell people not to captain Haaland. But in those weeks, it's the fixtures we've talked about for Salah, where he's got Forest away, arguably slightly better than playing Brighton at home. And then game week 14, where Man City got Leicester away, first game, so it could be very painful if he goes and gets a hat-trick there. Then Liverpool have got Leeds at home. So possibly you could look at it. But the problem is, I don't think now that Salah is just a much better option that week. I just think he's a different option. And then it comes down to risk and how much you're willing to take. If you go for Haaland and Salah absolutely smashes it, you're not going to lose much in overall rank. And the weekend is going to be much easier to endure than if the opposite happens. So I think there's all those kind of psychological things that go on in an FPL manager's head, but that's where I'm at right now. I don't know if outside game week 12 there's going to be another player that I captain, but I will still at least consider it for game week 13 and 14. We've had set and forget captains in the past. There's always a time where we don't captain them and another player does well. That can still happen for Haaland, but I don't think it's going to happen that much. So yes, for most people, he's going to be set and forget, and that is perfectly fine. Okay, so is owning 1 premium, and I like the fact that Haaland was put in brackets just in case I tried to say Salah or Kane should be the 1 premium, until game week 16, a viable strategy for a bit of fun. This way we can own roughly 3 or more £8 million midfielders / forwards, right? Which is absolutely true. I do think it's funny how a few weeks ago everyone's saying the £8 million midfielders are just bad, we don't need any of them, why was there all that discussion at the start of the season? And now all of a sudden they're back in fashion, we want like 3 or 4 of them. That just shows how quickly things can change in FPL. Is it viable? Yes. But again, I always think about how the majority of teams are set up, and not all of you will be in this same position. But if you've got 2 premiums, whoever it is, Haaland and De Bruyne, Haaland and Salah, Haaland and Kane, to kind of redistribute those funds, it takes quite a few transfers, and people are already trying to manage the blank in game week 12, and then possibly if you've got a wild card in game week 13, completely different question. We'll look at that in game week 13, and maybe 1 premium will be the way to go, especially if you're fully set on set and forget Haaland. But if not, let's say you use transfers to manage the blank, and then afterwards you need to get kind of Man City and Arsenal players back in, or whoever it might be. Like you want to take, like for me, I want to take Maddison out possibly to go to Saka or Foden. If Zaha's not performing, I might want to take him out. It's then very difficult to get the extra transfers to remove Salah or to remove De Bruyne or to remove Harry Kane to then redistribute those funds. So I think a lot of this is just going to come down to how many spare transfers you have to make it happen. It's very easy to do on a wild card, and I'm sure those on Game Week 13 will look at it. But for the rest of us, like I'm looking at my team, like I can bring it up here. Like if I want to pivot to not have Salah, well, I've got to use 1 transfer to get him out, and I've got to use another one to upgrade another player. Realistically, I want to keep Martinelli. So the only spot I have to get another £8 million player in is either Solanke or Andreas. And if I do it for Andreas, I'm benching Solanke or Mitrovic, which is not necessarily a problem. Like having Solanke on the bench if I need him for any particular game, it's not a problem. But I'm going to question over the next few weeks if that's the best use of my transfers. So I think for most people, if you're already set up in a 2 premium strategy and you don't have a wild card, I think it is viable to go 1 premium. I just think it's going to be difficult to get to. There we go. That is the Game Week 10 preview. If you have enjoyed that one and found it useful, please do make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. If you haven't already checked out Fantasy Football Scout, they do have a load of tools that can really help you be better at FPL. Link in the description below if you want to sign up to become a premium member. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow with a final thoughts video to cover off anything that comes up in the press conferences, so like the Fofana injury, Mitrovic one as well, plus anything else that happens too. And of course, we'll have a deadline stream on Saturday. Worth noting, the deadline is slightly later on Saturday this week. It's 1:30 UK time, so 2.5 hours later, just to deliberate over all those moves you're not really sure about. At least captaincy is locked in. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for watching. Give it a like, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you again soon.